were a couple that struck me, but just about everything in the top 20 of country was either an "Ooh, I Love You" baby song, or "Let's drop a tailgate and drink beer," or "I'm so heartbroken you left me." Those are the only three. Those are the only three things being written about in country music anymore these days, and that's kind of another big reason why I was so attracted to your song, Ben. Your song "Log Truck." And that's another big reason why that grabbed me, because it wasn't an "Ooh, I Love You" baby song, or an I'm so heartbroken you left, or "Drop a tailgate and, shake your money maker while I crack open a beer." So,
well, there's all kinds of songwriters, and I guess most of the country music business today, I guess there's not a lot of people that are writing what you would call traditional, even though I get asked all the time if I'm a traditional artist, and I like to say that I'm a very new country artist, because everything that I've written is new. It's less than 5 years old, everything, and so it is new, but it is influenced by traditional music. But a lot of the modern country definitely has leaned towards the pop theme, and that, like you say, there's not a lot of things that's going to be going on, because everybody sounds the same. So there's really no personalities left anymore. It's just more of a commercial business, and that's a good thing for that side of it. But I do feel that they should express more of their originality independently to personalities that want to be different, and like Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson that were doing the new things, but they still made a statement, and their own statement. Probably the most important thing.
Yeah, Waylon Jennings hasn't put out a new album in how many years now, though?
Well, it's been a long time, but he probably won't lend us too many more albums anymore. But he's there's no doubt there's a big generation gap.
Well, I know he's dead, but every country artist, they always put out like 3 or 4 more albums after they die, though.
Yeah, they usually take a lot of uncut stuff, or previously unreleased. Yeah, but it's the market has definitely gone to the teenagers for the most part, and it used to be you couldn't really get a major recording contract in the 50s and 60s unless you were at least 30 years old, and now if you're 30 years old, you're too old to get signed.
Yeah, well, the times changing now. I don't hold it against anyone that they've all got families to feed. They've got an industry to support. There's crews that go on the road, and it's putting food on a whole lot of people's tables, and that is the one thing that I can say about it. But when it becomes just about money and zero about music, I think we got a problem.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. It's a box, really, with a lot of the major music markets. It's a box, and if you don't do what's recommended in that box, it's hard to be successful at any amount of level. But it's one of them things that basically, if you're a trend changer, or sticking to something that's different, it takes longer to catch on. Like, even George Jones, one of the greatest country singers of all time, nicknamed him The Voice.
And then they made a TV show about him.
Yeah, well, they picked a good name for that, for sure. Yeah, and that's the thing about it. It's a personality. Like George Jones. George Jones definitely had a lot of personality, and that's just what you've got to be. So sometimes it isn't easy to, you might say, go against the grain in the music business, but that is what keeps originality genuine, is the fact that you know what you want to hear and you stick to it.
Well, the good thing about the internet and what we have today is that people can actually find what they want to hear if they so choose. They can either sit there and just flip to the radio station, or they can exercise some of their other options and actually find stuff. And, that's a personal choice we all make. Now, anyway, let's move along here. NashvilleGab.com. The Swan brothers respond to allegations that the TV show The Voice, as we were just talking about, is rigged.
Rigged, huh? Who would have thought that?
Well, they didn't say it was rigged. They just responded to allegations that the TV show is rigged. And they piped in on it. And if you want to hear their 2 cents on that, because the Swan brothers were finalists on The Voice, which is how they got known, you can get on over there to Nashville Gab and you can hear what they have to say about that. Now, I think what it is in the contracts, the producers of the show can sort of put their hands in it and alter outcomes. So it's not all just the celebrity judges and the voting public, things like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's hard to make a call on that for sure. You know, I think Blake Shelton was involved in some of the planning or things like that. I don't know a lot about it, but it is kind of interesting. I think that those shows are a really good thing because, you know, it used to be the thing that strikes me funny about these, I guess you call them maybe reality type shows or those types of singing shows, is they used to have in Nashville, you know, you could go down and you could try out a demo sing or you know, do your thing in front of these labels, and they'd sit and listen to these people by the hundreds audition. You know, it used to be that way. The industry was all about it. That's what the Grand Ole Opry started for, was to rise up local and young entertainers to the business. It was an open door for them to come in and check out to meet the requirements of a family-run show on the Grand Ole Opry. So they were auditioning people steady, but that went away when major record companies took over and got their stronghold, really. And so that's one of the things I do like about those shows, is the fact that it does give people an auditioning regardless of your age, because they turn their chairs around and the way you look, they're going by the voice. And so I think that part of it is unique and interesting, but I suppose it's like a lot of things, it gets, what you might say, a little political with how it's really influential to who really gets picked, I guess. Maybe there's a little this or that in the judging and stuff like that. Maybe they
But if the public likes you and other companies like you and they think they can do something with you, even if you don't win, it's still great exposure and can bump you up. Because I mean, the Swan brothers, I don't really watch The Voice, so my understanding is that they did not win, but yet here they are with a hit song because they were on that show. Anyway, we're going to move over to countrystandardtime.com right now, and they are talking about the new Johnny Cash album, Out Among the Stars, that's finally been released.
About time, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you know, all these guys, as soon as they get to heaven, the first thing they do is they hit the recording studio. You know,
rolling, huh? Take one.
I know. I mean, well, wouldn't you? I mean, imagine the pool of musicians you have to choose from there. You know, so anyway, these recordings on Out Among the Stars, which is the new Johnny Cash album, they were actually discovered by Johnny's son just a couple of years ago as he made his way through his father's archives after Johnny Cash's death, and it was a collection of songs that was recorded in 1981 when Johnny was actually having sort of a low point of his career, and after hearing it, the label just decided to take a pass and shelve the project, so it was never released, and just the recordings, which also include a duet with June Carter Cash. I think there's 2 duets with June Carter Cash and 1 duet with Waylon Jennings is on the album, and they've just been sitting over at the Cash estate all these years.
So put her together and put it out, huh?
Yeah, and well, his son, who's also a producer, also helped, you know, go over the recordings and, you know, bring him up to today's standards and get him out there. And I had a listen. I went on YouTube and I had a listen to a couple of tracks from it. And one of them was about a guy who kind of busts into a store and waves a gun around, but allows the store owner to go, and then he just kind of stands there and waits for the cops to show up. I didn't listen to the whole song, though, because it was, while the subject matter was great, I mean, it was a really unique storyline, and I'll probably go back and listen to it and finish that one up. But the music itself was, pretty typical and, redundant, and there was just no edge to it. That old Johnny Cash edge to it, I didn't find it there. Although I loved the subject matter of the song, it was pretty unique. And then there was another tune in there that I had to listen to. It wasn't terrible. I mean, I didn't even dislike it, but I also didn't love it. It was just kind of more polished up than I like my Johnny Cash to be.
In my opinion, Johnny Cash, you talk about the edge, Johnny Cash was one of the best rockabilly artists that I've ever heard.
Oh, absolutely. It just, when you hear those old recordings of Johnny Cash, and they just got this raw edge about them that just, that just claw their ways right out of the speakers, and then, later there was this lull kind of in the 80s where it was just what he was doing just wasn't quite that edgy anymore. One of the reasons that you probably lost a little bit of their edge there is because the recording technology had changed so much to a digital age that just the recordings themselves were so clean. Back then, on the Sun Records cuts, I mean, it was considered dirty or filthy recordings because it was taped and there was just a couple mics in one room getting this guitar and bass and vocal kind of all in one pass type of deal, and they didn't have multi-track, and it was just a gritty rock and roll sound. And as it got cleaned up in multi-track and digital recording, the tracks got so clean that it did take away from just that process alone. Is bound to take away originality to, especially an artist that has a lot of grit like Johnny Cash. Exactly, and that was, I remember Neil Young was really railing against the digital age when all that was happening as well. And there were a lot of great things the digital age brought us, and some other things that make it kind of tough for the rawer and more gritty artists. But anyway, I've only heard 2 songs off that album, so I'm far from making a judgment call on it just yet. But hey, let's move on here. Let's go over to the 615.com. Now, these guys have a story. They have a real country music news story that nobody else had this week. And it's just beyond me how nobody else jumped on this story. And you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Mickey Gilley just performed his very first show on the road in 5 years after recuperating from a 2009 fall that left him paralyzed from the neck down for 3 months and has had him in physical therapy for the past 5 years. And he has struggled and fought himself back and has just played his very first show back on the road. He still can't play piano, but he's out there performing once again. And the 615 are the only ones who were cool enough to report on that one.
Yeah, Mickey Gilley. Yeah, he's like the top honky tonk singer of country music for sure.
Yeah, I mean he fell 5 years ago helping a friend move a couch. He stepped in a flower bed. He was the guy walking backwards with the couch. Stepped in a flower bed, and the next thing he knows, he wakes up 2 days later in a hospital, and he's paralyzed from the neck down.
Bad deal.
Yeah, well, he's struggled and fought his way back, and he's only recently been able to walk again, actually. Anyway, the Undercountry Music News Coup of the Week goes to the 615. And
yeah, I would say.
And we got one more place to check in with here before we wrap up the Undercountry Music News, and that is Country Music is Love. And I think I'd like to hear your thoughts about this one we're gonna get into here. George Strait has just played his final show of his farewell tour, The Cowboy Rides Away.